Peyton Vance hit the sidewalk with a thud as her paper grocery bag split open, apples rolling into the street like tiny traders. No, 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 not today, she muttered, crouching down, trying to gather cans and bruised fruit with one arm while balancing her purse and a half-broken heel with the other. It was the final straw in a day that had already chewed her up and spit her out. A sleek black car, a Bentley maybe, slowed beside her, but she didn't look up. She wasn't in the mood for judgment from strangers in designer suits. "Let me help you," a deep, calm voice said. She glanced up, squinting against the late afternoon sun, and saw a man in a navy wool coat crouching beside her. His dark hair was neatly styled, his jawline too sharp to belong to someone who'd ever had a bad day in his life. A small crease formed between his brows as he handed her a dented can of soup. "I've got it," she said quickly, brushing hair out of her face. "I'm fine." "You're clearly not," he said calmly but firmly. "That bag's done. Let me get you a new one." "I don't have time to." He stood up before she could finish, walked to the back of the Bentley and popped the trunk. Peyton blinked. Who kept reusable totes in a luxury car? He returned with one leather-handled beige canvas, probably worth more than what she'd spent on groceries. "You don't have to, I want to," he said, crouching again and helping her put everything inside. "One less bad thing today, right?" Peyton looked at him, really looked. He wasn't just good-looking, he was striking, but it wasn't the tailored coat or watch that caught her attention. It was the way he looked at her, like she wasn't just some random girl on a sidewalk, like he actually cared, even if only for a minute. "Thanks," she said, taking the bag as he stood. "Where are you headed?" "Just 4 blocks down, I'm good, really." He hesitated before nodding. "All right, but next time let the bag carrier do the heavy lifting." She let out a quick laugh. "Next time," he smiled, warm and unexpected. "Next time," he repeated. Then he got back in his car and drove off into traffic like some kind of one-time sidewalk angel. Peyton shook her head, half smiling. What a weird interaction. She adjusted the tote on her arm and limped the rest of the way home. 2 days later, she was standing behind the counter at the Clay Cup, the tiny pottery cafe where she worked, when he walked in. She nearly dropped the coffee she was pouring. "You," she said, blinking. He looked surprised for a second, then smiled like he'd been hoping to see her again. "Me," she blinked again. "Do you just appear every time I drop something?" "I was hoping you worked here," he said, stepping closer. "I drove by yesterday but didn't see you, thought I'd try again." "You drove by." She trailed off, confused. "I figured if I didn't find you, I'd just keep buying coffee until I did." He shrugged like it was nothing. "I didn't get your name." "Peyton." "Nice to meet you again, Peyton. I'm Nolan Kingsley." The name clicked somewhere in her brain, but she couldn't place it. "You're not from around here, are you?" "I'm around more than I used to be," he said. "I have a place uptown." Of course he did. "Well, can I get you something?" "Coffee, black, and if you have any more of those cinnamon muffins, I'll take one." She rang him up, still trying to figure him out. He leaned on the counter like he had all the time in the world, watching her carefully but not in a creepy way, more like he was curious. "You really came here looking for me?" she asked, handing over the cup. "I couldn't stop thinking about you. You were having a bad day and you still laughed." "That's rare." Peyton paused, caught off guard. "I was a mess." "You were honest. That's rare too." He left with a muffin and a promise to come back tomorrow, and he did. Every day by the end of the week, Peyton looked forward to Nolan's visits more than she wanted to admit. He never pushed, never asked for her number, never made her feel uncomfortable. But he listened. He asked questions. He smiled like she was the only person in the room. And slowly, she started to open up. She told him about her dream of opening a studio, her own pottery gallery and cafe combined. She told him about her mom, who'd passed away and left her nothing but a box of old art books and a strong work ethic. She told him about the savings account she was building, one tip at a time. He listened like it all mattered. One evening, just before closing, he stayed behind, sipping coffee while she cleaned. "You're not like anyone I've met," he said, watching her stack mugs. "Because I spill things and trip over my own feet," he laughed. "Because you're real, you don't pretend. And you're not afraid to work hard." She paused, heart fluttering. "You're good at compliments." I'm good at saying what I mean. She glanced at him, suddenly shy. What do you do anyway? Besides carry fancy grocery totes, he hesitated. I run a few companies, investments, real estate. Tech, her brows lifted. So, you're successful, he gave a half nod. You could say that. How successful, he met her eyes. Millionaire successful, Peyton blinked. Oh, you okay? Yeah, it's just. I wasn't expecting that. I didn't want it to matter. She looked at him, really seeing him now. Not just the coat or the watch, but the man behind it, the one who showed up every day just to talk to her, the one who helped her pick up bruised apples. It doesn't, she said quietly. It doesn't matter. His eyes softened and he stood. Can I take you to dinner? She hesitated. Like a real dinner, fancy, no grocery bags involved, she laughed. Okay, yes, he grinned, and it hit her like a wave. She liked this man, more than she should, probably. And for the first time in a long time, she felt something spark deep in her chest. Like maybe, just maybe, her luck was changing. The restaurant was perched on the top floor of a building so tall Peyton had to tilt her head all the way back just to see the edge of the rooftop. A valet opened the car door before she could reach for the handle, and Nolan stepped out first, offering her his hand not with the flourish of someone trying to impress, but with the ease of someone who expected her to take it. Inside, the elevator was paneled in dark wood and lined with mirrors. Peyton caught her reflection lip gloss barely holding up, hair swept into a chignon she'd tried 10 times before giving up. She felt like an imposter in the backless black dress she'd borrowed from her coworker, but Nolan's gaze never left her face. When the elevator chimed open, she stepped into a dining room lit by candlelight and city views. Every table was spaced far enough apart to give the illusion of privacy, and everything from the fresh orchids to the starched white napkins whispered wealth. Do you bring all your coffee shop acquaintances here? She said lightly, as a hostess led them to a table beside the floor-to-ceiling windows. No, he said, pulling out her chair. Only the ones who make me want to cancel meetings. She laughed, though heat crept up her neck. You cancel meetings? I did today. He sat across from her, and a waiter appeared instantly with a bottle of wine already uncorked. Nolan didn't glance at the label, didn't ask the price. The waiter poured 2 glasses and disappeared. Peyton studied him across the flickering candlelight. His expression was calm, but there was something behind his eyes, a restlessness, maybe, or something heavier. So, she said, swirling the wine, you run companies and cancel meetings. What else should I know about you? He leaned back, folding his hands. I used to think success would make everything simple, but it turns out the more you have, the more people expect. Sounds exhausting. It is, but lately things feel different. How so? I've been thinking more about what I actually want. What would make things feel real again? She tilted her head. And I'm part of that? You are. She didn't know what to say. No one had ever said something like that to her without it feeling like a line, but with him it didn't feel rehearsed. It felt like truth, raw and unpolished. She cleared her throat. I'm not used to this, any of it. I know. That's part of what I like about you. You like that I'm uncomfortable. I like that you haven't adapted to pretending. The waiter returned with their meals, a dish Peyton couldn't pronounce, plated like artwork. Nolan thanked him without breaking eye contact with her. Tell me something you haven't told anyone in a while, he said. She hesitated, cutting into her food more for time than appetite. All right. When I was little, I used to sneak into the art wing at the local museum. I'd sit there for hours, sketching. I got caught once and lied, said my mom was a curator. He smiled, not laughing at her but beaming like he could see the girl she'd once been. Did they believe you? No, but they let me stay. I can picture that. She set her fork down. Okay, now your turn. What's something you don't tell people? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked out the window, the lights of the city reflecting in his eyes. My father was never supposed to die when he did. He left everything to me, but not because he thought I was ready. He just ran out of time. She didn't speak. She could feel the weight in his words. I spent years proving I could handle it, he said. And then more years trying to convince myself I actually wanted any of it. Do you? I did, until I forgot why. She leaned forward, elbows on the table. And now I want something that doesn't come with boardrooms or contracts. I want something I don't have to negotiate. She stared at him. You think that's me? I don't know yet. But I want to find out. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was charged, full of questions neither of them knew how to ask yet. When they left the restaurant, the city had gone quiet, the streets slick from an earlier rain. His driver pulled up, but instead of getting in, Nolan turned to her. "Come with me." "To where?" "Somewhere better than this." She hesitated, then nodded. The car wound through the city, past glittering towers and sleeping storefronts, until it stopped at a set of iron gates that opened without a word. They drove up a winding drive lined with lights buried in hedges, revealing a house or no, a mansion, white stone and glass sprawling across the hillside with views of the skyline far below. "I wasn't trying to impress you," he said, watching her reaction. "I know." Inside, the house was quiet, the foyer echoing beneath a chandelier shaped like falling water. He took her coat and set it gently over the banister. "I bought this place 3 years ago. I've never brought anyone here." "Why not?" Didn't feel right. Until now, she didn't speak. She didn't have to. He led her through the house, past rooms she couldn't take in fast enough. Everything was designed to be breathtaking, but not cold. There were books stacked on the coffee table, a record player softly spinning in the corner, and a fireplace already lit. They stopped in the den where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a painting. "You ever stand here and look out, wondering if it's all worth it?" she asked. "Every night, and what's the answer depends on the night." She turned to face him, lit by the firelight. "And tonight, it feels like it might be." He stepped closer but didn't touch her, waiting. She reached up, fingers brushing the side of his face. "I should be overwhelmed." "But I'm not." "Why not?" "Because nothing about you feels fake." He exhaled, a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Then stay," he said. "Just for tonight." She looked around at the house, the view, him. "Okay," she whispered. And for the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about what might go wrong. She was thinking about what might happen if everything finally went right. Peyton woke to the scent of citrus and linen, sunlight pooling across the silk sheets like liquid gold. For a moment, she didn't move. Her body was wrapped in warmth, her mind slow to catch up to the reality of where she was. The room around her was quiet, the kind of quiet that came from thick walls and the absence of chaos. She sat up slowly, pulling the sheet tighter around her. Her borrowed dress was folded neatly on the chaise across the room, and beside it, a note on creamy stationery in Nolan's crisp handwriting. "On the terrace, come hungry." A robe, soft as a cloud, was draped over the chair. She slipped it on and padded barefoot across the cool marble floor, following the scent of coffee and something far more decadent. The terrace overlooked the city, the morning haze softening the edges of the skyline. Nolan stood at the table, dressed in a slate gray button-down with the cuffs casually rolled up. His hair was damp, a towel slung over one of the chairs like he'd just come from a swim. "You cook?" she asked, stepping into the light. "I can follow instructions," he replied, holding up a plate of crepes filled with fresh fruit and drizzled with something golden. She raised a brow. "From scratch, mostly," he said, pulling out a chair for her. "I had help." He gestured toward a tall man in a white chef's jacket disappearing through the side door, and Peyton laughed. "Of course you did." "I didn't say I was proud," he said, pouring her coffee. "Just hopeful you'd be impressed." She picked up her fork. "This is definitely not a bagel and cream cheese kind of morning." "I wasn't sure how you liked your eggs, so I avoided the question entirely." As they ate, the tension that had curled in her chest since waking began to ease. He didn't push, didn't act like the night before meant she owed him anything. If anything, he seemed more at ease than ever, like her being here was simply right. "I have to head to the studio in an hour," she said, setting her fork down. "We've got a kids' party today, clay animals." "It's chaos." "You like that, though." "You don't know that." "I do," he replied. "Your eyes do this thing when you talk about it, like you're remembering who you were before the world made you forget." She blinked. "That's specific," he shrugged. "You're kind of hard to look away from." She reached for her coffee, hiding the way her lips curved. "You're very sure of yourself." "Only about a few things," he said. "You're one of them." Before she could answer, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, then stood quickly. "I'm late. I'll have the driver take you. I can walk." "I'd rather you didn't." She hesitated, then nodded. Okay, but I'm not letting your driver carry my bag. He stood and walked her to the door, holding it open as she passed. I'd never rob you of the thrill of hauling clay scraps and juice boxes. She turned back at the threshold. You're impossible to predict, you know. I hope that's not a bad thing. It's not, it's just new. Hours later, she was elbow-deep in glaze, surrounded by squealing children and lopsided giraffes, but her mind kept drifting. Not to the house or the view or even the breakfast. To him. Nolan, standing barefoot on the terrace, talking like he'd known her for years. When the party ended, she stayed behind to clean. The door chimed just as she was wiping down the last table. She turned, expecting a parent who'd forgotten a coat. Instead, Nolan stepped through the doorway, holding a small brown paper bag. I thought you might need this, he said, setting it on the counter. She peeked inside, 2 warm scones, still soft with melted chocolate. You know we sell pastries here, right? These are from that little place you mentioned near the park, the one with the crooked sign. Her eyes snapped up. I told you about that once. I remembered. She leaned against the counter. You're making this very hard. What am I making hard, keeping this simple? Maybe it's not supposed to be, she exhaled. You say things like that and then expect me not to fall for you. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat of him. I don't expect that, but I want it. She looked down at her clay-stained hands, then back at him. I've spent so long keeping my feet on the ground, Nolan. I don't know what it's like to fall without a net. I am the net, if you need one, she swallowed hard. You don't even know all the messy parts yet. Then show me, I'm not afraid of messy. She reached for him then, fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. He didn't kiss her, not yet, but his forehead touched hers, and for a moment the world outside the studio disappeared. Later that night, she found herself standing in front of a boutique after closing hours, the windows dark. Nolan was beside her, hands in his pockets. I wanted to get you something, he said. You could have done that during business hours. I didn't want to walk in and point. I wanted you to see it. He reached into his coat and pulled out a key. She stared at it. What is that? I bought it. You bought the boutique. No, he said calmly. I bought the entire block, this store included. Her mouth opened, closed. Why? Because the space behind it is zoned for commercial use. It's perfect for a pottery gallery with a cafe. She couldn't breathe. You didn't. I did. I can't accept that. You're not. You're leasing it from me, $1 a year. She stared at the dark windows, the streetlight catching the edge of her stunned expression. You said you wanted a space, something of your own. I just connected the dots. She turned to him. This isn't a gesture, this is life-changing, I know. He stepped forward. Peyton, I'm not just falling for you, I'm already there. She felt the words ripple through her like wind across water. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, just let me be part of whatever this becomes. And for once, she didn't argue. She took the key from his hand and unlocked the door to a future she never thought could be hers. The front windows of the newly renovated studio gleamed in the early morning light. Peyton stood inside, barefoot on the cool herringbone floors, the faint scent of fresh paint and lemon oil lingering in the air. The shelves Nolan had commissioned were lined with her work-glazed bowls, textured mugs, delicate ceramic vases all arranged with care, as if this space had always belonged to her. Outside, a velvet rope cordoned off the entrance, flanked by 2 gold stanchions. A sign mounted beside the door read, Clay and Crescent, a studio by Peyton Vance. She hadn't even chosen the name Nolan had. He said it sounded like something people would whisper about, like it had its own gravity. She turned as the door behind her opened. You're early, she said, watching Nolan step inside, impeccably dressed in a deep charcoal suit. I couldn't sleep. She tilted her head. Nervous? I'd be insane not to be. She folded her arms, trying to read him. You've opened companies in 4 countries. You've spoken at conferences, closed deals worth more than I'll ever see, but helping me open a pottery studio rattles you. He walked toward her slowly. Because none of that ever meant anything. This does. She let the words settle between them. I feel like I've been dropped in someone else's life, like I found the back door to a dream I wasn't supposed to walk into. He stopped in front of her. You didn't find a door, you built it. You just didn't realize the blueprint was always yours. She touched the edge of a shelf, grounding herself. What happens after today? He raised an eyebrow. After the opening, after the guests leave, after the first sale. After the excitement fades. He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She unfolded it slowly. It was a lease agreement, an updated one, her share of ownership, 50%. She looked up, stunned. What is this? I promised you a lease. I never said you couldn't own half of it. You're giving me half the building. I'm giving you what's already yours in spirit. I just made it official. Her eyes scanned the document again. You didn't need to do this. I know, but I've spent years giving people exactly what they wanted. You're the first person I've ever wanted to give something to because it felt right, not because they expected it. She folded the paper, her fingers trembling slightly. You keep doing these things that make it impossible not to fall harder. He stepped closer. Then don't fight it, she leaned in, her forehead resting briefly against his chest. Tell me you're not going to disappear when things get complicated. I don't disappear, I double down. She pulled back, searching his face. What if I screw this up? Then we fix it. Together, she stared at him, the weight of the moment pressing into her chest like a heartbeat. I've never belonged anywhere, Nolan, not really. You belong here, he said. And if you still doubt that, give me 5 minutes and a microphone, her brow furrowed. What? He reached into a small side pocket and held up a tiny black velvet box, her breath caught. Nolan, no, it's not what you think. He opened it to reveal a smooth silver ring with a ceramic inlay, a perfect swirl of deep blue and ivory. It's a promise that I'm in this with you. That this isn't a phase or a whim or some temporary escape for either of us. She reached out and touched the ring, her fingers barely brushing it. You made this, I asked your friend Mia. She said she owed you for covering her shift last month. I designed it. She brought it to life. Peyton's voice wavered. I don't know how to do this, be someone else believes in like this. He took her hand and pressed the ring into her palm. You don't have to know how. Just let me believe in you until you can believe in yourself. A soft knock interrupted them. Mia peeked into the studio, grinning. Crowd's getting restless. You ready? Peyton nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I am. The grand opening began just after 11. People flooded the space, friends, local artists, curious neighbors, and a few reporters Nolan had quietly invited. Peyton moved through the crowd, answering questions, wrapping purchases in paper stamped with the clay and crescent logo, laughing with people who had no idea she'd once been the girl scraping together rent with tips. She caught Nolan talking to a local councilwoman, casually mentioning their plans to host community art nights. He looked so natural there, not as a millionaire, but as a man proud of something real, something handmade, something hers. Late in the afternoon, the crowd began to thin. Peyton stepped out onto the sidewalk, the sun warm against her back, and took a long breath. Come here, Nolan said behind her. She turned. He was holding a small clay pendant on a leather cord. It was uneven, imperfect, and glazed in a soft gray blue. He slipped it around her neck. What is this? My first piece, he said. I came by last week when you were out. Mia let me try the wheel, she laughed. You made this. Let's just say the original plan was a bowl. She touched the pendant gently. It's beautiful. It's a symbol, he said. Of the fact that not everything has to be flawless to be meaningful. She stared at him. What do you see when you look at me, Nolan? I see the woman I didn't know I was searching for until she dropped her groceries on the sidewalk and refused to let me be a stranger. She stepped closer. You saw me when no one else did. No, he said. You let yourself be seen. That's even braver. The sky above them turned soft with the approaching dusk, and the city lights began to blink awake. I love you, she said, her voice steady. He didn't flinch. I've been waiting to hear that since the second day I walked into your cafe and realized I didn't want to leave. She kissed him fast, certain, alive with everything they hadn't said. And when they pulled apart, she whispered, You were the last thing I expected. He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. You were the only thing I didn't know I needed. Inside, someone turned on the studio's fairy lights and the windows glowed. Peyton looked at her reflection in the glass, not the girl who dropped apples in the street, but the woman who had created something lasting. She reached for Nolan's hand. He didn't ask where they were going next, because now they'd built something neither of them ever wanted to leave. Together, the gallery's opening had been more than Peyton could have imagined, but the days that followed settled into a rhythm that felt even more surreal. Orders came in from art collectors and interior designers. A travel magazine had featured her in a 2-page spread titled From Clay and Coffee to Crescents and Success, and a local university reached out about hosting a lecture. But success didn't feel how she'd expected. It wasn't the press or the praise that made her heart race. It was the mornings when Nolan brought her a double espresso and stayed long enough to help her unwrap kiln-fired pieces. It was watching him sit behind her during a workshop without saying a word, just being there. Present, constant. It was the quiet. Still, there were things between them they hadn't said. Late one Friday night, after the final customer had left and the lights in the gallery dimmed, Peyton found Nolan in the back office, seated behind the desk she rarely used. He was staring at an old sketchbook she hadn't touched in years. "You drew these?" he asked without looking up. She stepped in slowly. "They're from before I moved here. I was going to apply to that artist residency in Florence. I never submitted the packet." "Why not?" "My mom got sick. I stayed. Then life just moved." He closed the book gently. "Do you regret it?" "I used to, but not anymore." He leaned back, thoughtful. "I've been offered a board seat in Geneva. It would mean being gone a week or two each month." She gripped the edge of the doorway. "Do you want it?" "I want you more." She crossed the room. "That's not an answer." He stood. "I don't know yet. It's everything I used to want, but now I'd trade every board seat in Europe for mornings with you and clay under my nails." She smiled faintly. "You hate getting your hands dirty. With everything else, yes, with this life." "I'm learning." A silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable, just full of things they hadn't figured out how to say. "Nolan, what if I fail at this?" He reached for her wrist, his thumb brushing against the vein just beneath the surface. "Then we plant something new in the ashes." "But you won't, because you built this from nothing, and nothing is stronger than that." She looked up at him, her voice smaller than she intended. "I've never had someone stand still long enough to see who I am underneath it all." He brushed a kiss to her temple. "I'm not going anywhere." 2 months later, the studio hosted its first charity fundraiser. Peyton wore a floor-length navy gown with a plunging back, her hair gathered in a loose twist that Nolan had reached out to touch the moment she descended the stairs of their home. The event was elegant without being cold. String lights draped the courtyard. Ceramic lanterns she had thrown herself lit each table. Nolan stood beside her during the silent auction, his hand grazing the small of her back, guiding her gently through clusters of guests. She no longer flinched when people asked about him. She no longer felt like she was borrowing a life that didn't belong to her. At the end of the night, as the crowd thinned and the jazz trio packed up their instruments, Nolan took her hand and led her to the center of the courtyard. "There's no music," she whispered. He slid a hand around her waist. "Then we'll make our own." She laughed softly and rested her head against his chest as they swayed beneath the stars. Neither spoke, neither needed to. When he finally pulled back, his expression changed. It was guarded but hopeful. "My mother's coming into town," he said carefully. "She wants to meet you." Peyton blinked. "She knows about me." She saw the article in the Post. "She told me she hasn't seen me look that happy since before my father died." Peyton's chest tightened. "What if she doesn't like me?" "She'll love you. But if she doesn't, that's her loss, not mine." They flew to Connecticut the following weekend. Nolan's family estate was sprawling, ivy-covered, and intimidating in a way that reminded Peyton of the museums she used to sneak into. But the woman who opened the door surprised her, elegant, yes, but warm, with silver-streaked hair and a firm handshake. Dinner was awkward only for the first 10 minutes. By dessert, his mother was laughing at a story Peyton told about a clay explosion in the kiln. By coffee, she was asking Peyton for help sourcing new dishes for her summer home. After the visit, as they drove back to the airport, Nolan reached for her hand. "She told me something before we left," he said. "What?" she said, "that one. She's not just good for you. She's what your father would have wanted for you." Peyton's eyes stung, but she didn't look away. "I'm glad she saw what I see in you." Back in the city, life resumed its rhythm, but now it pulsed with certainty. On the last night of summer, Nolan invited her to the rooftop of their building. The air was warm, the sky clear. A table was set for two, the railing wrapped in draped lights that flickered like fireflies. "I thought we could celebrate," he said as he pulled out her chair. "Celebrate what? You'll see." Dinner was simple, her favorite pasta, a bottle of wine from the vineyard near her childhood home that she'd once mentioned in passing. When they finished, he stood and reached into his jacket. She froze. He knelt, not with flash or spectacle, but with steady hands and a gaze that never wavered. "I never planned on this. You, us, but not planning made it real. I don't want a life that's mapped out anymore. I want one that changes with us. I want the mornings and the evenings and every uncertain, messy, beautiful moment in between. Will you marry me, Peyton?" She didn't cry, she didn't tremble. She just stepped forward, cupped his face in her hands, and whispered, "Yes." 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, a thin band with a ceramic inlay that matched the pendant she still wore every day. She wrapped her arms around him, and they stood there, the city stretching behind them, the sky above them endless. Their wedding was held in the gallery on a rainy October afternoon. Guests sipped cider from handmade mugs, and the aisle was lined with vases she'd thrown herself. Nolan wore a midnight suit, no tie, and Peyton walked barefoot, her dress trailing behind her like a whisper of silk and stardust. They danced beneath the skylight while the rain tapped the glass gently overhead. Later that night, Nolan carried her across the threshold of their brownstone, a wedding gift from his mother. Renovated to include a sunroom Peyton had already filled with drying shelves and glaze samples. Their life wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and it was theirs. She sold her first full collection to a luxury hotel in Santorini. Nolan turned down the Geneva board seat. Together, they launched a scholarship for young ceramic artists who couldn't afford art school. They built a life that was rooted and wild at the same time. And every night, when she curled against him after long days and quiet dinners, he would kiss her temple and whisper the same thing. "You didn't just save me from the life I had. You gave me the one I never knew I needed." And she would smile, knowing she'd finally found the one place she would never have to leave, home.